The title of this podcast is Recent Victories. One of the things that I think is important to do, at least for me, is acknowledge what I'm doing well. As a recovering perfectionist, a lot of my life was spent, spending very little time of celebrating some of the things that I did well or when I won. Most of it was really fixated on when I didn't do well or when I, in my mind, failed in some way. I remember as a kid playing uh, touch football with my cousins in some very competitive games. And to this day, I remember my cousins and I, playing other cousins, and my team were mounting this really incredible comeback in this game. And we only had a few more minutes to play because our parents were leaving and we had to go. And we made this comeback. I scored a bunch of touchdowns to get us back. And there was this pass that was thrown. And I remember it was a great pass. It was pretty far, but I felt like if it hits my fingertips, I should catch it. And it got to my fingertips and it fell incomplete. And on the way back, my cousins were talking about the comeback and how we almost did it. All I thought about was the drop pass. That's all I thought about. Nothing else before that mattered. And, I think as Rick says, it's important not to do a lot of profit taking, but to reinvest your wins and your victories. And to do that, it requires I think first you have to acknowledge that there were some successes or that you are getting better, a little better every day, but to build on that, not to become complacent and say this is the end of it. There is no destination. The journey continues. So, a couple of recent victories that I love to share was really being truly kind and leading with kindness in my communications with two people at work that I work closely with, that I closed my heart over a task that they gave me to do. I reported to these folks. And I remember just the heart closing, not being receptive to what they told me to do, and not verbally. Verbally, I was receptive. I maintained eye contact. I said, absolutely, I'll do it. But inside, I was closing. But I used the practice, and thankfully, the practice got me on the other side of it to where I remembered that Keith Jones does not do self-inflicted suffering. I don't. Those days are over. And so, because they were the leaders that I reported up to, that, they're the ones who delegate tasks. And it's my job to carry out those tasks as long as I'm getting paid to do so. And once I came back to that and accepted that, stopped resisting it, I was able to carry out the task at a level that they were satisfied with. And so I'm really grateful that I didn't choose to suffer by resisting or keeping a closed heart to them. Another event happened earlier this year in the spring, in which a person who I don't work with was a physician, and we were having this retreat. And I was connecting with people at my table from his department. There were a lot of people, physicians and non-physicians, that were at a table. And he was walking around, and he said something like, we kind of talked and exchanged greetings. And he said something to the effect of, yeah, they're working on this. And I said, oh, okay. So how did they do that? He said, why don't you go ask them? At least that's the way I heard him say it. It wasn't like, oh man, Keith, I'm not sure. What do you think about going to ask them? He didn't say it in my mind, he didn't say it like that. Like it was an invitation. It sounded more like a command. And I remember as soon as that hit my stuff, I started closing. And I, held on to that for a few days. I mean, something so trivial, but it hit my stuff. And as a result of that, I knew I had some work to do. How did I know I had some work to do? Because every time I thought of this person or saw them, my heart was closed. And like the work is not with them. They probably don't even remember talking, saying something to me. And they certainly wouldn't remember the tone. And they probably said it as a request, as an invitation, but I took it as a directive. And but none of that matters. Even if they said it intentionally to be more of a command, um, it's my job to not allow that to bother me, to just accept that that's what has happened, and I can still proceed, to move with an open heart toward the table that he directed me to, as well as toward him, to keep an open heart. So I encourage you to think about what are some recent victories that you have experienced in terms of your growth from being 1.0 to 2.0, as well as explore some areas in which it might be helpful that you go back and revisit situations that you are currently suffering over, or people in which you've closed your heart to. There's a different way. And remember, like me, we don't do self-inflicted suffering.